busy. Look, the announcement, despite numerous attempts on our part to work with the Privileges Committee, and obviously we wanted to ensure that there was a fair hearing and representation, we're aware that in probably 23 plus years there hasn't been this type of challenge to the committee. But we wanted to make sure that our defence was given the appropriate time and voice, and we felt that it was really important that this didn't have a predetermined outcome. And we've constantly, there's been a lot of exchanges in letters and emails with our council about 5 key areas of concern to the Privileges Committee, and I think we tapped on that yesterday, but just to emphasise, the committee refused to allow us to have a joint session. We got up and represented this kaupapa through haka collectively. The committee rejected our right to have a council present. Submissions were a really crucial part of this, particularly involving our tikanga, given that that made up a critical part of the complaint. The committee refused to allow expert testimony from Tā Te Pau Temara on tikanga Māori, which denies our opportunity to provide context for our actions and context for their understanding. The committee denied our request to reschedule, limiting access to our chosen senior counsel, who is, you will all know, Christopher Finlayson KC. We were particularly concerned for Hana, Rāwhiti Maipi Clark, who has already been sanctioned in the House for her involvement in leading the haka and yet faces repeated proceedings. We said this yesterday emphatically: we will not allow the bullying of Hana because of her profile, and we've become really concerned for how our rangatahi are being bullied in this place. With all this being said, we've made the decision that if we needed to be reconciling, to be transparent, if we didn't turn up today, you'd want to know why, and if we did, we have decided that being accountable is really important, and we want people to understand what it is to be Māori and to have tikanga in this place. So we will hold an alternative independent hearing here at Parliament on Wednesday the 7th of May, and this was the original date that we had been requesting, and we will make sure that you're all aware of the details. We've been represented by Tānia Waikato and Honourable Chris Finlayson KC. Tānia Waikato is a uri no Ngai Tūhoi, Ngāti Awa, Ngāti Hine, Ngāti Tūwhare, and has over 20 years' experience working as a lawyer. She's recently been a formidable force in bringing light to many of our issues. You all know that Honourable Chris Finlayson, he's no stranger to this place, and had the honour for all of his sins chairing the Privileges Committee for 6 years while he served as the Minister for the National Party. So we think he may know a thing or two. We've been extremely grateful for their kindness and offering support to us during this time, and we promise to be very good clients.
Well, we don't know what is in store for us today in respect to the outcomes of the hearing today, but we know one thing: we're not sorry. Would we do it again? In a heartbeat, because this is who we are. And as this House deliberates, and as the media deliberates about what we are, it would be easy for us to bow down to the system and do what they say and dismiss the very essence of who we are. But we all made promises to ourselves, to each other, to our whānau, to our constituents and to our electorates, to our people and to our mokopuna, that we will always stand up for ourselves, especially in the face of what seems to be a never-ending tsunami of hate. This is not about a silly little Privileges Committee and their silly little rules. It's bigger than that. This is about us standing up against the tyranny of the majority and the contest between the dominating culture that Te iwi Māori has to contend with, against the people who at every turn are using their power to force us into submission. We have allowed this to happen to us for far too long, and we will no longer stand for it. When you all took, I'm talking to our people right now, when you all took to the streets for Te Tiriti, you empowered us to keep being brave, to keep standing up for ourselves inside of these trenches. And that's how we'll end this part of the kōrero, and we'll now hand it over to you for questions.
Has the committee communicated to Pāti Māori any of the potential consequences that might face for not showing up today?
No, and I think we just need to remind that it's not that we didn't want to have a hearing.
That's right.
We just couldn't get a hearing that was going to be fair and that was going to address the real, kaupapa, which is tikanga Māori. So the only correspondence we've had, which has gone between the clerk and our lawyers and our teams, has been that they have denied the ability for us. And right up until yesterday, our lawyers were pushing, our counsel were pushing for us to be able to have a hearing. So that's where it's landed.
But your demands, your tikanga demands, they are not against protocol, they're not against parliamentary process either. So in actual fact, you've been denied parliamentary process by not having your counsel submit, by not having a tikanga expert, and not being allowed to meet as a rōpū.
Yeah,
that's actually contrary
that's
to
right. I think we need to
process.
confirm we were not dodging and do not want to avoid being accountable. And I think that's what's really important here. We actually would love to open up what it feels like to be Māori in this place. We would love to explain what it is when we're doing our haka. But the reality is the committee didn't want to allow that.
Can you explain to us what form the hearing that you're going to hold on 7th of May will take? Will members of the Privileges Committee be invited to that? Who runs it and how will it work?
We will get to the detail of that a little bit later on, and we'll make sure we share that with you. But it will be very similar to the Privileges Committee, and we have already. We're going into discussions with members of other parties, whether former parties, to be part of that particular process, to ensure that there is an equal voice in that particular process.
Have you reached out to any of the other political parties currently in Parliament, and do you have any support for
Yes, we have, and yes, we do.
From who?
I would prefer to leave it for them to discuss. We're just so conscious that we're a bit of a hot spot at the moment, so I think it's just better that we get our own selves into trouble and not anyone else.
In respect to councils, though, the Labour Party allowed Michael Waterhouse's council to submit.
That's right.
So this is
That's
not
right.
unprecedented.
It's not unprecedented, and that's why we went to someone as experienced, as Chris Finlayson, because we're new to this, and what we didn't want to do is avoid the challenge. But what we also didn't want to do is be in a situation where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Both Lauri and I had to reconcile what is at stake here for ourselves and our whānau. And no one makes decisions like this lightly. And so the fact that we've got, archaic, really should be retiring politicians insinuating that is far off the mark. When we make a decision like this, it is actually about pushing back at the institution that hasn't had a pushback and saying that you have more than 50% of the Māori electorate MPs in this process, and you're not allowing us to express ourselves in tikanga.
Do you want to be martyrs?
No, actually, I'm going to say I don't like that word, particularly with what's going on in Gaza. But we didn't come in here to be doing anything other than what I already said, which was to push and make it okay that we have numerous hana. Today we witnessed Hannah being had up because she was reading off her screen. She's a second language speaker. And we need to make this place so that all of those who you kick out with, you can recognise yourselves in this place. That's what we're doing.
How do you respond to people who might say that you're just trying to invite consequence or punishment as a way of making a point?
I think it's bigger than, and like I said in my opening statement, this is not about, see, you would insinuate that this is performative, and we've heard this from the media before, that the haka is performative, that our tikanga is performative. In actual fact, it's transformative. It needs to be reflected more in the standing orders. And so those out there that think tikanga Māori, and that being Māori, and using the tools that we comfortably use on the marae in debate, like haka, is not performative, it is actually transformative. This House needs to start reflecting more of what the iwi Māori has to offer, and we would be we would encourage the Standing Orders Committee to look at what a tikanga process might look like in terms of implementing that into the standing orders.
Has there been any progress?
Yeah, there has been. I mean, Adrian has been appointed to it, and there's certainly a lot of discussion going on. But I think, what we've got to remember, sadly, in this place is that, every little thing you do, we were actually out on the floor when Lauri refused to wear his tie. I don't know if you remember that. We were out on the floor when we greeted Mika. This isn't new to us. the reaction is new to us. And so we're a little bit stunned by the reaction. But 1 billion people have witnessed what's gone on, and we've got an obligation to continue with saying we must do better. We must make this place and bring the barriers down so that we continue to resist against the dominating culture, which we feel has us as Māori under siege every day in this place.
Do you believe that Penny Henele got a fair hearing?
I think you have to ask Penny that. Yeah, I think Penny's party and their style of within the Privileges Committee is up to Labour and what they decided to do.
What would you decide to do if the committee came out today? Obviously, we don't quite know what they're going to say, but what if they were to come out today and to say, we're going to ask you to be summoned to appear before the Privileges Committee, in a formal manner, etc. What would be your response?
Why didn't you just answer to our tono to change the date, and we wouldn't have all this drama, and we could have just gotten on with it and be able to, again, express and show the world what it is that we live through and who we are, and that we're Māori every day. And so I think the to and fro is really, we're in the thrust of a power game that doesn't see that it should bend for Māori.
The ability to go to Privileges Committee and to use that as a learning opportunity, not just for this House, but for this country and for the rest of the world, I think has been missed in its first opportunity. And so if the Privileges Committee, in all their wisdom, was to allow us the date that we gave to them, would allow us that opportunity to be able to take the whole nation with us in regards to what we're trying to achieve here in terms of the transformation needed in this House and to reflect the cultural identity of its tangata whenua and not to continue its domination and its subjugation and its assimilation of our people in a House that was consented to by my ancestors when they signed Te Tiriti o Waitangi and your ancestors when they signed Te Tiriti o Waitangi.
Sorry?
Who will be paying for the alternative hearing today?
Probably ourselves.
We've been paying since 1840.
Now, are you concerned that by calling the Privileges Committee a silly little committee, you might inflame things with the other MPs on it?
Why well, if they take offence to that, then that's a them problem, not a me problem. Why I say that is that this is an issue around being able to have those negotiations, and what we've got is a Privileges Committee who is not really willing to negotiate, but to demand. And so even the legal processes outside of this House would allow both parties to be able to find a just process for everybody to ensure that all voices were heard and that we could come to a resolution that was suitable for all. The problem is that we've got people demanding, not listening, not taking into consideration the other half of those who are part of the privileges process, which is us.
Do you hold respect for the institution of Parliament?
The institution of Parliament, does it hold respect for te iwi Māori? That's the question I would ask.
And that is what it has to be about. See, what we see Parliament and government doing outside to our people is actually what we see it happening inside. And, what was expected of us. 100,000 of our people arriving here and what we were expected to do. Be true to them, be true to the people who put us here, or worry about those who are coming and going every 3 years, hopefully shorter. So I think, this again is about us being able to show at no stage are we shy or scared or intimidated by being accountable. This place doesn't intimidate us. What it is doing, though, is shirking its responsibility to understand us, and that's it.
If there's a new date, we'll see them there. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you. Appreciate it.